All right, perfect. So let's start off with name, how you got into this work, what you're doing now for women.
Okay, my name is Ilana Brown. Most people in the corporate world for a long time knew me as Lonnie, my nickname, and Dorado, which is my married name. Um, so the funny part is now that I've really stepped into this work, I am back to the name that I was born with. I had a career as a corporate brand strategist for about 10 years. Throughout that time, I was kind of always the corporate woo girly, a bit mystical, magical, always questioning the things, trying to understand why we would get more inquiries about when I worked on Verizon. Hey, why is service going out? And I'd be like, is Mercury retrograde right now? So it's always been something on my mind, this sort of esoteric world, while also navigating a corporate career. Um, in the time that I was in a corporate career, and actually at about a peak time is 2018, I was 1 year postpartum. And I received a message that I needed to visit three different places. It was Bahia, Brazil, where my ex-husband is from, New Orleans, and Havana, Cuba.
Oh,
There
wow.
are some similarities between all those cities for multiple reasons. So I went on these trips. And that was my first, what I'm understanding, foray into being what we call a grid worker. I was going to certain important sites and kind of praying and understanding and talking and communing. But what it all came down to at the end, I was told your job is to understand your culture, your roots, and what feminine power means as a Filipino woman. My mother's from the Philippines. My father's a Jewish American man, a son of refugees. So the places that I was taken to had nothing to do with like my unique culture. It took me on a long journey into understanding what indigenous Filipino spirituality looked like and what it meant. And what I understood was that eventually learned that what they call the babaylan is, was the sort of spiritual council of indigenous Filipino society. She sat with the kings. She was a shaman. She was a medicine woman. She was a healer. She was an herbalist. She was just counsel. She was a midwife. She was a death doula. I don't claim that title. That's not something that I have been initiated into. I did not grow up in those cultures or communities, so it is not a title that I claim, nor would I consent to many people claiming that. But what I did learn, it was that she was an archetype of feminine power. And I distinctly remember in this fall 2018 saying to my boss at the time, I think my job is to bring Filipino healing modalities kind of into the mainstream world. And then 6 months later, I was laid off.
The
So
universe.
the universe, thus began the journey. I was able to get a freelance gig. So that's when I started working freelance. And I started loving the freedom. A year later, I was also laid off. Had to just trust in something that was going to happen. This is 2020, or had to understand, okay, everything's going to work out. Everything's going to work out. Everything's fine. And as I was already into a spiritual practice, but it was starting to shift, it was really, my faith was being tested.
Mhm.
At the end of 2020, I started bleeding. And eventually what that led me to understand was I had a polyp on my cervix. I first went to a naturopath to understand what was going on. And she immediately said, PCOS. Went through a series of different testing. And she gave me supplements and like lifestyle protocols, how I eat, how I sleep, when to take certain supplements, how to balance my hormones. I also decided to go to an endocrinologist just to do my due diligence and get a second
Right.
opinion. They said PCOS, but the solution that they gave me felt bizarre to me and extremely unsatisfactory. It was they were like, we're going to put you on birth control. We're going to put you on I don't even remember what it was. I just remember when the number one warning she gave me was, but don't try to get pregnant, or if you're trying to conceive while taking this particular medicine, I don't know what it is, because it could change the sex of the fetus or the baby. And I was like, what? You know,
So
that
you're putting something in your body that could potentially harm another human being, but they're telling you to put it in your body
to
like a
change
synthetic
my hormones. And I'm like, what is going on?
solution.
So I already was like, no. So I
Yeah.
went on the longer, slower route of a natural healing process. Again, I'd already been in a spiritual practice. So, and I'd already been stressed out. And I started to realize, what is PCOS? PCOS is high testosterone, which can be caused by a few different things. High cortisol, so a lot of stress. Insulin resistance, which I'm starting to learn more about, or I've been learning more about. And, I come from a family with, like most people of post-colonial societies, we have diabetes, we have heart issues, right? So this health journey combined with my journey into my own spirituality that was very much, it's Eastern form of spirituality, indigenous Filipinos, spirituality or practices are very influenced and derived from a lot of the kind of Indian and Ayurvedic practices. We also work with the chakra system. But the whole idea is that, as with any animistic society, animism means the idea that everything has a soul. It's not just the one God. Um, in a lot of these practices, the idea is that every physical symptom or ailment has a spiritual cause. So as I was getting deeper into my ancestry and my lineage and like generational trauma, and then starting to understand the body and what's happening to me, that was in 2020. And again, I had already been on a journey. I already had spiritual practices, but now it was really shaping. Now, 6 years later, I am fully aware of the fact that um, everything has a spiritual, spiritual, socio-emotional, mental, and physical approach. They, what might have happened with our ancestors generationally, what that means for our nervous system and our epigenetics, how that translates to our body at the cellular level today. And then when I do the work that I do, before it was like very rooted in shamanism. It still is. But
Mhm.
now, with the way science is shaping up, quantum biology, quantum physics, I'm able to trace it back. I'm like, this pain that I have in my shoulder, or that a client of mine might have in their shoulder, is actually rooted to a fifth generation family curse. So how do we do it? We don't just treat the physical symptom. We treat the spiritual symptom. We treat the social emotional symptom. We work with the nervous system. So we're hitting it at every layer. And so that's the work I do. And it's been a long journey. Eventually took me into herbalism, studying, again, a lot of Filipino shamanism. I trained in the Philippines with a teacher. I trained a certain type of body work, a somatic practice with another Filipino teacher. It's called Hilot. That's the ancient Filipino healthcare system, but it's more commonly known as a type of body work. It's very unique. So I went and I had a farm and a healing space. I went on this sort of journey of like, how do I get away from corporate America? And I was freelancing at the time. It gave me the freedom to kind of do these things. And then finally, at the end of 2023, I felt like like I was tired. I was living two lives. I was like doing, healing work and exorcisms on a Saturday morning in my farm, and then typing up a deck for a tech company
Right.
on Tuesday. My body could not handle it. And eventually a lot of things started falling apart in my life. I was given a very clear thing: make a decision. You chose this path. You've taken oaths, you've taken vows. What's it going to be?
Right.
And it was hard for me to let go because I was like, but the money, but the security, but I'm a mom,
Like
but I'm a
the
breadwinner,
conditioning, the
all the
conditioning that
conditioning.
keeps
And
you stuck.
I was the breadwinner. My now ex-husband, like, he wasn't working at the time because he was building our sort of farm and healing space. Everything rocked out. I had no other option but to get on my knees and surrender, be like, God, I don't know, or creator ancestors, I don't know what it is you want of me, but I am here. Please walk me through. Um, and I
And you
went
were okay. You
and I
surrendered.
surrendered, and surrender is a process over and over and over again. And I started to recall, you know what? Every time I've been asked to surrender, the first time I was laid off, I was the only mother in my department and a breadwinner. I only had 1 month of savings. But then I got a freelance gig, and that year I made more money than I never made in my life. I got laid off again, more money than I ever made. Then I got this house. I only had when I decided to leave my job, I was told on March 2024, it's time to leave your job. I knew my boss at the time, who when I met him in 2020, I said, this is going to be my last boss at advertising, an incredible, prolific man who I still feel like I'm bringing his mission forth. He would always say to me, I'm a kamikaze pilot. I'm getting you into the doors, but I don't know what the answers are. I don't know what the solutions are. That's what you know. Months later, I gotta go. He was really sick. He had cancer. I left the job March 2024. I knew I had to leave. He died a few months later.
Ugh.
I remember the day before he died, I remember I dreamt about him in July, and then a week later, his wife sent an email saying he was in the hospital. I remember September saying, "Oh, he's gonna go soon," and then the next day, we got an email, he passed that night.
Oh my gosh.
But he was the person who kind of, like, set me forth, and when I quit and I knew I had to let him go because he wasn't willing to let go of the job, the work, the process. He worked until the day he died.
Oh my gosh.
My best friend in advertising, who was also a very prolific copywriter, a Black woman, so she had to an outspoken, extremely talented woman, but she had what I'll say, a good target on her back for being exactly who she was.
Right.
She was my daughter's godmother. She finally, after a lot of struggle, a lot of push and pull, got the title she wanted, the job she wanted, the treatment she wanted, the salary she wanted without having to fight. And before it even started, she died in company housing at 29 years old from ketoacidosis, a symptom of prediabetes, very common in women who have PCOS. So, with the deaths that I've experienced and people very dear to me in this industry, with my own health scare and my own mission, my understanding and what I've been learning and what I've been accepting over and over and over again is the way things have been. People are sacrificing their body on the altar of corporate America, on the altar of money, on the altar of performance. Corporate America has become um, it has become an arena for all of our wounds to play out. And about a year after I quit, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm supposed to go back into the corporate world, but not in the same form." I'm going in like I feel like a Trojan horse, or rather, I'm rising up an army of Trojan horses from the outside. And so that's what I do now.
So your primary audience, not just women, but men, correct? Or are
Men
you mostly working with women?
men and women. In 2022, I had a message that you're gonna be working with men. I never knew what that meant. While I'm very much focused on women in general,
Uh-huh.
through my eventual divorce, not only did I have to, I had like a lot of healing work that I was doing, and then more the nutrition and sort of holistic protocols, then also starting to understand the subconscious mind, um, our heart and brain coherence. I started to work and then feminine energetics and really studying in like feminine mystery schools about the art of being a female leader and what it means to actually embody feminine power. And it doesn't come from ways we believe it to come from like the strength of the pushing the through and the struggle. It's
The
actually
masculine.
and this very masculine. It's actually about really embodying an energy and a frequency, really understanding your intuition. It's very right brained, which is something that's been a bit stymied in this industry. When I've started to work with women and kind of talking to women, helping women get vulnerable with themselves, intimate with themselves, bringing up the woman within the woman again. But now I'm starting to actually have some male clients. I have my first big male coaching client starting in April, someone I've known for a long, long time. He's an analyst. He works, in finance, like on Wall Street. So I think he's very brave. And what I've understood is, uh, on one hand, I've suffered, quote unquote, at the hands of men in many, many ways. But I have this deep, deep compassion for men.
Uh-huh.
I can, and to my detriment, I had to go on a long journey of learning my own boundaries and standards and how to like hold an energy, hold a man's heart while also not being um, injured by the sword that could easily be pointed to me. So, yeah, I think men are going to start coming through. I think a lot of men feel comfortable with me because I can see them
Right.
and hold them and offer a sort of mothering energy that they didn't have and showing men how to get back into their hearts. Because ultimately, if I would say, what is my main goal as a medicine woman? It is to connect our hearts back to Mother Earth's heart so that we always walk at her pace.
What's the main thing or symptom or what is the main concern that people come to you with? You've done like 6 years. You're basically everything that you did in 6 years, you're putting into a program to help people
Yeah,
reconnect with themselves and understand that these systems were not really built for us anymore and they're crumbling. We know that. We both left
yeah.
corporate. We know that they are going to be crumbling within by 2027. Well, it'll start. It's already starting. What do people come to you with when they are suffering?
And it's so funny. I'll say this back in 2015, my head of strategy was like, what is everyone's predictions for the next 10 years? And I was like, big rise and like, I was like, revolution, a return to the written word, back to the land and a movement towards indigenous. I kind of like, and then kind of like, it was like, none of that's real. Like, what are you talking about? And now I'm like, bet. But since and it's funny, it's like because my first foray into all of this actually started just postpartum, but it's like really about I had a high risk pregnancy.
Mhm.
My pregnancy went from being this very like peaceful thing to I moved across the country 6 months pregnant, started a new job. My pregnancy turned high risk because I was so in my masculine and so in my scarcity and so in my desperation as the breadwinner, as all the things. I was like, okay, do it, go. It's painful, and I'm also, like, grateful for it, of course, right? And so I even just learned to recover my pelvic floor, eat from my hormones, listen to my body. It even started so it's like, I feel like my journey's been this, like, 9-month journey. I mean, motherhood was my biggest initiation, as it is in many ways for everyone, but initiation into this work. Um, but people started coming to me first. My whole life, people have always come to me for advice, for my perspective. People are like, you seem wise. Can you tell me what's going on? I want your advice. I remember my first year in corporate America, someone from grad school reached out, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, and was like, I have a really hard life decision right now. And like, I just need to hear the realness. Do you have a minute?
Are you a
So
projector, by the way?
I'm a manifester.
You're a manifestor.
Yeah. So my job is to speak into people and to see things. And I've noticed that. So a lot of times people come to me for clarity. But I would say in 2022, everyone who came to me came for matters of the heart. A lot of people going through relationship rupture, a lot of dissatisfied women, a lot of women coming to me because they didn't know what to do. At the time, I believed my marriage was going well, but it seemed to be that a bit of foreshadowing. And as I moved through the process in 2024 of going through like the dissolution of my marriage or separation, I'm like, ladies, I have the answer. So at first, it was a lot about self love. And that was the consistent message to everyone. It was like, date yourself. If your love, your turn on, your aliveness, your pleasure, that is a self resource thing. Why would a man be turned on by you if you're not turned on by yourself? And that
Right.
has been a consistent message. Like, if you feel, and then you expect a guy to bring that out of you, there's layers of things we could unpack about that. But the first of all, that's a bit of the little girl inside of you. Obviously,
What do you think gets women there? Like, what do you think it's just completely abandoning who they are by following a playbook and ending up where you and I have ended up in
yep. I think that's one of the biggest pieces of it, just following the playbook. also not doing the inner work to actually like heal all the inner child work, all the little parts of ourselves that are still looking for our dad somewhere or our mother.
Or a corrective experience or any
Exactly.
kind of corrective experience.
Absolutely. And then there's the generational piece that it's like the sort of ancestral spiritual piece, past lives, um, things that have gone on in your things that have been passed through. And if when you start looking through all these things, you're like, oh, that was my mother. Oh, that was my grandmother. Oh, that was my great grandmother. You can trace it back to some of those energetics. Um, so self-love was like a big thing and
Mhm.
learning to date yourself. It's so interesting because I have one client who started with me back then, and every year she'd come see me. And this is when I was still doing just like kind of readings, like one off. She'd see me once or twice a year. I didn't hear from her all of 2024. She said, you know what? I didn't get in touch with you because I didn't like what you told me. But then when I looked back, everything you said happened. And I was like, she's like, it's not about you. She was like, I was just, but she's like, you said all the things and I'm living the life that you said I was going to live. And I was like, yeah. She came to me again, matters of the heart, towards the end of last year, feeling very blech about her life and her job and her love life that has never really taken off. And I said, we've been working together for, at this point, almost 4 years. Are you ready to do the bigger change, not just one reading? You've changed so much in 4 years. Like you have evolved. Let's get it done. We did a 3-month container of subconscious recoding sessions and coaching. Um, and, I talked to her maybe a month ago and less than a month ago. And she was like, oh my God, I'm dating this amazing guy. I've never been treated this way before. He just flew me out to New York. I just sold the biggest campaign of my entire career. And I am downsizing my home because I think I want to move to Costa Rica. So we had completely allowed her to redefine her entire self concept. Her
Right.
concept is rooted as like, I am a creative director. I need to get married. I grew up in the South. I need to have children, and really like punishing herself. Not
Societal
actively.
programming.
Yeah, completely. So we deconditioned it and she was able to see herself. And her intention was like, I want to know my own depths, but I'm scared of them.
Yep.
And so I do think a lot of women come to me for that, to really know who they are. Um, and this man who came to me, he's like, I don't really know entirely like who I am. And that's the work we're doing. We're just kind of like petal by petal, like uncovering who this person is, understanding all the little child parts and teenage parts that are stuck somewhere and kind of aligning it. We're aligning who you are as an adult and with your subconscious mind, your physical body. And we're like, this is me. I have people come to me a lot, especially women, a lot of women who also have decided not to have children. And a lot of them who are actually who are like post, who are menopausal. Um, we do a lot of work around conjuring up their sort of divine feminine energy. Who am I as a woman? Who am I as a leader? And how do I step into this role as more, we'd call it like an elder or a crone, um, and sit in this role when I haven't gone through certain rites of passage, like giving birth to a child. I'm like, so how do we give birth to yourself? So a lot of that. And then what a lot of other women come to me, and I think this is sort of the bread and butter of my practice, and it comes through a lot of the what I carry through my indigenous Filipino lineages, is how to develop an actual practice. This boss I spoke of, his whole thesis for his company and for his work with, and he was an artist. He was an interactive artist who became a creative director to support his family and just to really like step up as a man. And it's beautiful. But his work was like, everyone deserves or everyone needs to have a creative practice. And so he developed a methodology to allow people to practice their creativity, especially in like a corporate setting where we have to, be creative really
Perform.
quick. Yeah. So after he passed and that started shifting, I'm like, everyone needs to have a spiritual practice. Then I'm like, but for some people, art is their spirituality. And it just turned into everyone has to have a practice, which is something I'm going to be talking a lot about more I just spoke with another man who I worked with 10 years ago in New York. He got in touch and now he went to like a Kundalini yoga practice, and then he's been sitting with some plant medicine. So he's in his dabbling phase, but he hasn't figured out what like his practice is. What is it that he stands for? And so that's the work that we're doing is like, okay, like what aligns you in mind, body, spirit? What are the things and practices that you can and should upkeep? And they can without as much rigidity, but it's practice. You have to get your reps in. And we are used to having practices that are like punishing and difficult. How do we add a bit of pleasure and joy to them as well? How can they be restorative without you having to go to a yoga class? Like how can you develop a relationship with yourself and how you like to move in the world and achieve your own balance? So that is the other big thing that people come through to me. And for everyone's different. Like I have one client, her practice is, our work was we have her try all these different things. These are all channeled work. She does shamanic process. And then eventually I was like, hey, look at your calendar. You have meeting, 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 meeting. I asked you about your self-care. Can you schedule it and make it sacred? So now instead of doing something every day, she has a few practices every day, but then she
Mhm.
has a block of 3 hours on a Monday, and that is her sacred time. She takes a bath. She does her all the things, all the like yummy, juicy things she wants to do. It's like that is the time. And then her other practice is every Friday night, she has a steak dinner with her man. Actually, that came through because she is anemic and she needs to be eating more, like iron. She's more iron in her diet. And so nettles, the plant nettles came through for her to start drinking some more nettle tea and nettle infusion. And then also to have this steak dinner, but make it nice. I'm like, use the nice plates. Do you like the things? Do you
Yeah.
like it? Like, does it feel good? Does it turn you on? Are you turned on by your life? And that's
I'm also gonna feel
ultimately,
guilty doing all of this.
yeah. And it doesn't have to be like, it can be very small and delightful, but it's like, do you like it? And do you like it because it's practical? Or do you like it? Do you see beauty in it? Do you feel turned on? Do you feel alive by it? Does it make you, are you just like, I love this corner. It looks so good. And that's like my life. I'm like, I can live a very simple life, but I'm like, what I own and what I have, I love. And I don't know, that's kind of part of the practice too, is can you see beauty in everything around you? Can you shift your mindset to see the cup half full? Um, and I know when we worked in corporate America and everything was such a like
Well, and
everything
it's so
just felt like,
sterile, and
yeah.
women, like, I mean, women look at us and they're like, "Wow, like, how did," like, it's almost like they really wanna be like us, like, delving into health and foundational work and goddess work, but they judge it because they don't know how to access that part of them. They've just been conditioned to be in this suit and act as a man and be in this sterile environment. And I shouldn't do that, and I shouldn't speak this way. And will people judge
Mhm.
me if I say that? And it's not safe to be a
Yeah.
woman.
It's not safe, and even that, so a lot of the work I do is around, I call it subconscious recoding, subconscious reprogramming. It is a proprietary process that I've developed that takes a few different modalities that use kinesiology, mantra, shamanic journeying, and inner child IFS parts work, we call it, um, to understand what are some of those belief systems. So I'm a fundamental believer that, there's the stories that we tell and the truth that we perpetuate. And if we change the story in our mind and in our subconscious, we're basically rewriting our life. And so in my work, we'll understand, hey, when I was 8 years old, there was a belief that was installed in me that like, this is the way to do things. One of them, and this is difficult because there's so much evidence in the world to prove otherwise. When you start studying like quantum healing, the subconscious mind, you understand you have the ability to create everything. And our subconscious is full of stories that tell a story we don't want, and it's housed in our body. It's not to say that these things didn't happen to our lineage, to our ancestors, to our mothers, and that we're repeating, but because it's housed in our body, we're repeating it. What if
Right.
every single woman was able to recode into their mind, men are safe?
And they have to do inner work to do so. Because even though they believe that consciously, I
They
think
have to
a lot
do
of women don't understand that no matter what you want consciously, subconsciously, you're always going to
Yep.
choose.
And that's what I mean, subconsciously, if we're able, that's my process. We recode in your subconscious. Imagine it's like you have faulty code, like a computer and like software
Right.
that's like men are dangerous. So you can say, I think men are safe, but in your amygdala, there's the program, the film, the code that's always like men are unsafe. So you can say men are safe, but around you, your subconscious is going to create situations that are going to prove that the belief in here that you're not even aware of is true. But if we can get into here, and there's so many modalities, subconscious recoding is what I do. Some people use NLP, there's hypnosis. That's one part of it. If we could all then recode that into like new software, and that's
Mhm.
kind of like what I do. I think of it as like a software update for your brain. I have coded probably upwards of 800 new beliefs into my subconscious, and I watch my life change. I watch for, and then I keep a list of evidence to show that this is true. And then you start fishing for the evidence. Men are safe. Oh, this man opened the door. Oh, this man gave me a compliment. Oh, this man sent a nice email. Oh, this man did. And the more you focus on the thing that proves that the belief is right versus focusing on the thing that's not happening, it's hard because then there's that, right? That's just one piece of it. The other part is all the other belief systems about, then so as you also have to embody that. What does that mean? That means any behavior that a man shows that's not safe
Uh-huh.
becomes unacceptable in your field, unacceptable in front of you. And doesn't mean you have to fight them on it. It means you remove yourself if you're in a place that you can. So it's a process. It's not just recode and done. It's recode. It's the embodiment piece. How do you act? What do you do? What are the behaviors to like rewire, right? We're working with your neuroplasticity to rewire like neural pathways. So that's the first step. Plant the new seed, recode, and then now it's like do all the things that support that.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what people are coming to me for lately. Subconscious recoding is a really, really big one.
Right.
Um,
And what do you think, and I've done a lot of this inner work, and I touch on this work with all of the toxic work environment belief systems that the women I work with have, and then filtering in nutrition and clearing your head so that you can make grounded decisions. But
Mhm.
what what do you there's so many people in society right now because of all of the problems we have going on, because of the nervous system dysregulation. People just want a quick fix. They
Yep.
want to get a new job. They just want to white knuckle it because they need the paycheck, or they need to get that state, keep the health care because they're the breadwinner or the only one making money in their family, so they have to stay. But what is the cost of not doing this inner work and taking the long road and not taking the shortcut? Because as we know, these systems are crumbling. So what is the cost for people who don't do the inner work right now going into 2027?
Oof. Pain can sometimes be the greatest teacher.
Uh-huh.
It is a great teacher. Pain usually arrives, whether it's physical pain. Again, what's that pain that you feel that you're ignoring in your body? And then, right, what is it really trying to show you? But pain is an opportunity for change.
Yep.
If you ignore the pain, aka you don't do the things you need to do to change, the pain will increase and that pain turns into suffering. And then when it turns into suffering and your soul can't handle it anymore, it will create a crisis that will give you no other option but to change and choose better. That was my experience. I had a lot of pains, a lot of push this off, and it's a
Right.
everything fell apart. Sometimes you do have to let it break. Sometimes you only know surrender when you let it break. And I think essentially that's what's happening at a collective scale in this world is like it cannot handle things the way they are, so it is going to crumble.
Right.
That is also where I think the faith piece comes in. And sometimes I want to say I'm reluctant to talk about it, but I don't care anymore because what we have lost by putting by sacrificing our bodies and our lives and our well-being on the altar of money, we have made money and productivity our god.
Right.
And so when you're like, what happened? That's the deepest scarcity. We call it root chakra problem, it's a scarcity mindset. If you don't do the inner work right now, you're going to get forced into no matter what, I guess is what I'm really trying to say. It's going to have to happen.
Right.
But right now, and it takes time. And the thing is, I think, and like, I'm sure you're witnessing this, but I think also in the work that I do in the communities that I'm with, a lot of our healing work has started to shift. Talk about like the quantum, and it's become much more precise and faster. Like I said, I just worked on a 3-month container with someone and I watched before, when we were doing readings, when we were doing this, when we were doing that. It's like, I watched this woman over 4 years make incremental changes. But right now, because we're trying to shift things quick, that's why a lot of the medicine people, our work is changing. We're like, how do I change this in your mind really quick? So you can start seeing it. So the risk of no one doing anything right now is the system that you're so loyal to and fearful of won't even exist. And
Right.
then what?
Right. And how, let's say, if there's an alarm system that's telling you something's not right here. I think a lot of women, A, don't really know that they're in a bad situation
Yeah.
until because they've made all these excuses in their mind why they have to stay. And B, I think that us as women, we are so good at, y- I guess, defaulting into, well, I feel this way, so let me work harder, or let me sign on later, or let me put my health aside because that doesn't matter, or let me put work first in front of my kids, or let me just be so much more. I'll take on this extra project without getting paid. So, these things are wrong, and then you end up completely burned out or worse with an autoimmune or a cancer diagnosis. How do we learn to start listening to our bodies instead of defaulting to, let me get back on this hamster wheel?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good question. I speak from my own, as someone who was like in spiritual work, yet also was doing these exact things, working 2 corporate jobs, couldn't say no to the project, but then also doing this work. Eventually, I had to call myself out. I was like, I'm not being in integrity. But you know what happened? I gained a ton of weight. My PCOS popped off. My ex-husband left because I was not just because it was a joint thing, but I mean, I was not bringing my best self
Right.
to that marriage. Like, my whole life fell apart. Like, I was on my knees. I was on my knees. I think part of it is a lot of us also sharing our stories about this because we don't come here for no reason, you
Right.
know? But in terms of how to help women start listening to their body, that's
And men.
and men, all of it. I think that's where, like, right now, the collective is starting to talk about these things. The word embodiment, somatic, conscious leadership. It's starting to, but that's sort of what my work is on, focusing on women who are like in leadership roles or just influential roles. It can be anyone really, but people who are in these roles because it's a groundswell. A rising tide lifts all boats. That was the mission that I was given. It's like, if I can work with the women at some higher levels, how they start to change and operate affects everyone under them, so to
Right.
speak.
The leader. It has to start at the
It has to start.
level.
I see, there's a couple incredible leaders I've seen who are really starting. One of the ones I've seen is, her name's Jean Bethany. I don't really know her. We've just like been connected on LinkedIn for a very long time, but I'm watching, she's talking about rest. She's talking about just like taking care of herself. And so that's ultimately how I think getting people to listen to themselves. It has to be modeled. It has to
Yes.
have an embodied leader to do the modeling, and then to also encourage it. When a leader, a boss is the one who's like, everyone log off, everyone go do this. I think from a corporate world, like now that the pandemic, it was rough, but I think when we're still in those weird places where we haven't figured out how to be social with each other anymore. But it's
Mhm.
like we haven't learned to speak from the heart and be and to I'm like I want corporate retreats. I want retreats that people are doing in the wellness world to like actually be a corporate offering instead of an offsite where we're proving and making a PowerPoint and then drinking and then partying and then nothing actually got done and we're not closer and maybe there was something scandalous and I'm hungover and I what the hell.
Right.
Um we got to bring a little bit of heart back into the corporate world. How to lead with your heart.
Yep.
That's ultimately what it is. And so what that happens is how to listen to your heart, how to listen to your body. I know there's people tackling it from corporate wellness retreats. There's people who are tackling it from teaching about or like, corporate wellness activities. Oh, yoga and meditation, sauna bath, on your lunch hour. Um, and those activities I think are helpful. And I'm
For
sure
Band-Aids until you do the inner work, though.
until you do the inner work, and I'm also sure, like, how many people are like, "I would like to do this sound bath. Oh, but I have a meeting, so I guess I can't."
Right. It's the first thing you're gonna knock off the list.
The first thing you're gonna knock off the list. So I do think it does have to be a bit of an individual pursuit, but I think understanding who are the people who are most able to it sounds elitist, and I don't mean it to be, but I do think the leader sets the tone. And if you can just get a couple more people to talk about listening to your bodies, at these high levels and watch it trickle down, it changes. Just the energy of it all changes. Male leadership is very prove this, perform this. Everyone's like scared all the time. It's
Right.
terrible.
And what would you tell somebody who has, like, a very toxic leader, right? I mean, they're in a bad situation, you know, kind of going off of the elitist thing, like, we all just can't quit our corporate jobs, even though we both know everyone will be okay if they do. But if somebody's in a truly toxic situation, they are the breadwinner, they're like a single parent, what can they do right now to s to be to instead of white knuckling it? Like, what are the steps that they can take while they're in this situation right now to make it bearable, to have an end goal?
It's going to be a hard answer, but it's one I had to learn. Boundaries.
Boundaries.
And the work to do boundary work, you have to understand all the different ways that not having boundaries was programmed into you. And then you have to develop the strength to set the boundary, the communication to actually say it and hold it because the boundaries are. And then listen, the person around you is going to throw a temper tantrum.
Mhm.
And this happens. So I think boundaries are big, but also internal, like focusing on your own internal safety.
Right.
That's a big one. Like if you can resource a feeling of safety, and as I say this, I can already hear people being like, but I'm not safe and this and this and this. And it's like, it doesn't actually matter. Your safety, your sense of safety, when you outsource your sense of safety, you're taking away agency from yourself. And so it's like a practice of like, I'm safe. I don't feel safe. I feel like my livelihood's being threatened. I feel like my sense of self, but it's like, I am safe. I'm safe. I'm safe. I'm safe. I'm present in my body. I'm here. I'm safe. No one can take that away. And that for me comes with a relationship with something bigger than me, something
Right.
bigger than work, right? Something bigger than my boss. We make our bosses God,
Right.
money God. Whether you believe in God, creator, the universe, whatever higher belief above you, you got to know that's your sense of safety and it's in you. Because the moment you're like, you make that person God, then they get power over you. And it sounds so much easier
Right.
than done. But truly, that's when I started sticking up for myself and just being like, I'm not going to do this. Watch the temper tantrums. It's also trust that, like, if you do stick up for yourself, and if there's retaliation, you got to trust that something better is coming for you. That's
Yep.
been my number one belief. And I can say it unequivocally. Every time I've been like thrust out of a situation, it's because something better was on its way for me. At the time, I didn't feel like that. At the time, I was like, holy shit. Oh my God. I'm a mom. I'm a breadwinner. I have surgery on my frickin' cervix to do. Like, what the fuck is happening? And every time I'd be like, hey, there's a gig. Okay. Like, and I think that was like unwavering faith. And I say this and part of me feels like reluctant to talk about faith and God, but like that's who I am. And so I'm not going to stop talking about it. And I would say if people are very triggered by it, there's a lot of like programming and things that are, if you grew up especially in like the Catholic or Christian household where there was a lot of like suppression and repression and oppression around those themes.
Right.
God doesn't have to be that. It can be just
Can be whatever
energy,
you want it to be.
source energy. Yeah. But
Right.
reclaiming that relationship, I think, is like a very important thing. So,
And how can people work with you, get in touch with you?
yes, I work now in a couple different ways. I work primarily in a 6-month mentorship. Um, it's a 6-month embodiment mentorship where we kind of tackle all these subjects. We get into the body, your subconscious beliefs, your ancestry. We develop your practices, which to answer the other question, your practice, whatever practice is, your creative practice, your spiritual practice, your practices, that is what I would get into. Because it's when you develop a practice, you get in the reps, those are creating moments of presence and consistency. The path forward will come through. Your nervous system will be a lot more
Safe.
safe, regulated. And then you'll find out that the way that your boss is probably doesn't really bother you as much anymore. You're like, okay,
Right.
all right, King, whatever. Like it won't bother you. It bothers you because you're under resourced.
Right.
So that's usually how I work. Right now I'm working in a 6-month program. It's individual, 1-to-1, 6 months. It's called Wind Under Your Wings. Everything we spoke about is more or less touched upon. It's custom to each person. I am also now doing private retreat days, and that is like, that's where I go into a lot of the deeper healing work and a lot of the body work that I do to really get you like restored, a lot of beauty and glamour magic. It's a lot about like revitalization and vitality. And then I offer what I call feminine or ancestral feminine embodiment ceremonies where we combine breath work and movement and kind of bringing up like your sensual aliveness and bringing that all around California. And then I host retreats. So the full body of work and the full experience. And the next retreat I'll be hosting is in Hawaii on the summer solstice from June 19 to 2020 or June 19 to 22. And that is where we're really delving into like your ancestry, but then we're also delving into like what it means to be a feminine leader and to feel like going to conjure that feeling in you so you can take it wherever you go. And then I am about to launch my site. It's just ilanaebrown.com. And then I'm on Instagram at Ilana E. Brown. Linktree, Calendly are all there. My email's there. But those are the best ways to get in touch.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We have the same last name. Well, my husband's Brown. I didn't change my name,
Oh,
but my
shoot.
kids are Brown.
Yeah. I had, I think legally I'm still like Brown Dorado from my marriage because it's so funny. Like I was like, I born Alana Brown and then got married and it's like Alana Brown Dorado, but everyone has called me Lonnie. So it was my whole life. And at one point in this journey, I was like, I want to be called by my name,
Yeah.
And then I was like Lonnie Dorado for most of it. And then I became Ilana Dorado again. And then now it's like Alana Brown. And I'm like, oh, I'm actually myself in like the name that I was given and born with, in the form I was supposed to be. So it was a very interesting journey of reclaiming Brown, and not having my married name. Because I loved that name. I loved it. It's a really cool name. But my name is my name. And a lot of my work is around that. In this lineage, we work with Filipino deity. And through him, we use your name to understand phonetically, like the weight of each
Ooh,
syllable
interesting.
or vowel rather. And then when we find the name, each vowel is associated with an element. And then we combine the elements to find your unique element. An example, one of my clients, it's like a steam fog. And so we start channeling, okay, so how do we maintain it? Through elemental practices, like what are the watery things you need to do? What are the fire things you need to do? And so this client I think I spoke about who takes nettle and steak dinner, like that was channeled in this process. So through that, we're like, so how do you maintain so that it's really like a custom um self-care practice or series of practices to maintain your energetic harmony based on your name.
I love that.
Yeah. So that's how most of the coaching container starts. And then we go through and kind of refine and pull out and then do the inner healing work that will stop because a lot of people face resistance. I have a client now who um she needs to be taking her minerals. She needs some charge in her body. Getting her to take her just green juice and minerals has been like the biggest struggle and getting her to do a practice to have a consistency in a practice.
Mhm.
What we understood though was, she has some inner child programming around religious spiritual practice. She grew up in a very like strict Catholic household. Yet she
Right.
desires, like, I want to have this ritualistic lifestyle. And it's like, well, so that we're overcoming some of that programming and doing a lot of
Right.
the inner child work. And once we did it, she took her minerals. But I didn't know that. And I saw her. I'm like, you look incredible. Like, do you have makeup on? She's like, no. And I'm like, what has changed in the past 2 weeks? She's like, I started taking my minerals. I was like, there you go. Proof is in the pudding. Like, and it can be as simple as that.
Right.
So, yeah, spiritual, it's like your life is the altar, your body is the altar. That's what this work is ultimately. The goddess is in you. You don't have to worship anything outside of you, just worship yourself.
Ugh, I love that. I wish I could go to your retreat. I'll
Oh
get
my
you
god,
pregnant.
I know. I love it. I mean, there will be more. I would love to bring it to the East Coast too,
I
and
know. I have a place for you actually to do it in Vermont
I
in the
yeah.
summer.
Oh, yeah. I might go do 'em in New Mexico. It's like my first solo retreat. Like I've done, activities, workshops, ceremonies, whatever, and I do a lot of retreat with like my partner, but it's my first solo retreat, but there's still sort of like a council of women involved and a lot of Filipino women. So that was a big other assignment is like raising the octave of the Filipina healer. We know about Ayurveda, we know about TCM. And it's like, what about Filipino medicine? I mean, and so we've all been tasked to kind of like bring it up. And the Filipino woman is sort of like the embodiment of like the Holy Mother. She's like the embodiment of feminine energy. If you think about it on the low octave, and I say this respectfully, like Filipinos are one of the most trafficked people, right? A lot of sex workers, but we use for comfort. We are nannies in the desert all over the Arab world, taking care of people's children, cleaning, cooking. We're nurses sent to pandemic and endemic sites. Filipino women, we are entertainers. They're put on cruise ships. Like Filipinos are literally, like in the Filipino women specifically, it's like our light, our energy, our light has been kind of commodified, exported, and then devalued. And so part of this work on like a more mission driven ancestral level is to also like raise up the octave of the Filipino healer and like all those. I mean, my mother is a nurse. I mean, the most noble caretakers across the world. Like everyone's like, I have a friend. She's a Filipino nurse. That's everyone has a story about a Filipino nurse or a Filipino mailman. But the Filipino light and the Filipino people have been so exploited and exported. And so a lot of my work is also about um, raising the octave of the Filipino again um, through practices that aren't us trying to prove that we could fit into the Western world. We're not just good little Americans. We're just, we're doing the work of like healing and our heart medicine, our hearts, like the Filipino is known for their heart. And so that's a lot of what this retreat is also about, is really, like, I don't wanna say showcasing, but really just, like, establishing, like, we are heart warriors, and letting that be the prevailing story. You know, when you wanna learn about your heart and how to get back to your heart, like, go work with a Filipino.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, we'll end there.
Thank you.
So much.
You.